Mics on mics.
Yeah, it is what it is. Nobody's looking at this.
No, I think the video of a podcast is uh less important than the audio.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Most people will ingest this, but it also is fun. Some podcasts, I've seen where they'll talk about something and then they bring it up on the computer, and you're going, wait, I need to see what they're looking at. So
Right.
we'll see. I don't know how to do that in this
In
software.
Zoom?
I'm
Yeah,
sure
it's
that
actually
we
pretty
could
easy.
share something.
Yeah, I think so down at the bottom there's a bunch of whiz bang little buttons, and one of them I think is share screen.
Is
Oh
there a way to
yeah,
pin it to where these stay up?
probably.
Okay,
But I don't know.
that's fine.
But yeah, I could certainly here, let's try it for fun. All right, so I'm going to share a screen. So right now, this is my switcher. It has a little audio mixer built into it, but this is, camera one. But I could probably go to bars. There we go. See bars. And then yeah,
Bars in a 440.
yeah, it's fine. I love these guys. I know that we don't have a sponsor, but if I did have a sponsor, it would probably be these Black Magic guys because I think they're neat. They make the
Is that
coolest.
this ATEM?
Yeah, it's a little tiny. If I go to, here's their little website. Can you see the website?
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
there's
So if I go
Tony.
to yeah, Tony, that's right. Now we all know him. ATEM live switchers. All right. So they make this tiny little thing, and it
So you
is
can have a
just
physical interface.
right. Yeah. So yeah. So I do that. That is what's driving all of this right now. Is it's this tiny little. Let's see what happens when I actually click on it. Uh, there's. Show me the back of it. Come on. The back is there. We go. So you have four HDMI inputs and one HDMI output, and this you plug into your computer, and it looks like a webcam to your computer. So now you have four
Oh,
semi-pro.
okay. And it's just feeding it whichever. I got you. Yeah,
Right. And on
and that's really cool.
well, and so the coolest part about it is they have a couple models. The one that I have, and the reason that I got it, well, I should say the one I have first, um, has this little record button on it. And so if you plug in a little USB-C disc, which I have, this guy, right? And if I plug him in and I hit record, it records every single ISO'd input plus the switched output plus these two microphone inputs, and it's all put together in like a timeline. Whenever you open it in their video editing software, it's just ready to go, like all your
Are the
source files.
audio
Mhm.
ISO'd or are they glued to each individual stream and the switch?
So the audio is ISO'd.
Okay.
Um, And so, yeah, so and it depends on what you're recording. A lot of people are like, oh, this is great. This is how I rip off Netflix and record my home movies. Well, no, there's a thing called HDCP that still jumps in there and keeps you from doing that.
The
But
digital police.
now the reason that I got this is the other thing is, so I did a whole bunch of transfers. I have it's a film transfer, Super 8 and 8mm, and it just takes one picture at a time of each frame, click, like that. And it turns it into H.264 file. Well, so I wanted to play that back, and I wanted to be able to record my alive relatives, right? The ones who are getting old. And I just wanted to be able to hear the story because it's silent film anyway, right?
Right. And can I
So,
let them narrate of what we're
right.
seeing?
Yeah. And
Nice.
so I'm playing back the video through one of these HDMI ports, and then I have because each one of these microphone inputs is actually a stereo input. So I
Okay.
bought these little Rode wireless that now it's at focus. Rode Wireless Go 2, and you would not believe this. This would have been prohibitively expensive when we started
yeah.
out. But
I'm
these
I'm
things,
so jealous in one regard of a lot of the things that are available today.
I know, yeah, well, yeah, and I don't really did get to. I'm sort of past it, but I'm also happy that I'm not in it right now because there's just too much, you know. So so anyway, each one of these microphones. So basically, I had 4 audio tracks, wireless, and I put these on all the people in the room, and they're kind of big, and they have a microphone built in, and if you have a lav, you can like wire it up and hide it if you want, but it's just so handy to use the one. Well, and it doesn't sound bad. Um, and so I had 4 of them going, and one of my cousins showed up in the middle, and she's like, "Why is everybody wearing life alerts?" So, yeah, maybe they should work on their design a little bit. I thought that was funny. So anyway, yeah, so I got this cool audio track lined up with it, and you can do that in editing programs. Like you can play back and lay down audio, but the thing you can't do in editing programs is rewind it and step through it. If they're like, no, 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 go back. I want to see that again. And then you can step through the frames. And so this records whatever I'm doing out of my computer. So I can, jog through it. I can blow past some stuff. And I have this kind of like, yeah, just commentary. We just have this commentary happening. And hopefully, I meant to put it up on the YouTubes and send it out to the families, but a lot of those people are like, "Can you send me a DVD?" Well, yeah, it'd take me forever, but yeah,
Let me
like,
find that muffin of burnable DVDs that I didn't throw away, but I shoved somewhere.
DVD is a dead format, and I got into Blu-ray. It's a dead format. Anyway, that is not what we're here to talk about. I mean, it is kind of, but
Is that
uh,
power connector a BNC?
this one, no, it's a screw-on,
Okay.
which I never screw on. Like, one thing
That's
about black magic is they tend to overheat, and when they overheat, it's usually because you've left them on for a week.
gotcha.
So if you use it for your 5-hour show or whatever, not a problem. Heck, if you use it and you're in a cold room, not a problem. But at least they used to have problems with their little throwdown boxes overheating. But it didn't matter because for $300 for an HD switcher, it was like buy 2, and you're not going to
No,
get another switcher for that cheap. So
here's the backup. Yeah, on the rear view, it kind of looked like a BNC, but yeah,
I
okay. Well, that's cool though. Do you want to? I kind of want to start with a history.
okay.
Um,
I'll stop sharing my screen.
that's
There we go.
fine, but I don't remember specifically. I mean, I knew you through church, and I think you're a year younger in school grades.
Yeah.
But what got you into I want to buy a synthesizer, I want to buy a tape recorder or 4 track or sequencer or I have no idea what the
Right.
impetus of the need and desire to buy a keyboard magazine and then start buying stuff out of it was for
Right.
you. Tell me about that.
The earliest memory of like synthesizer sampler was um, Radio Shack had like a tiny keyboard. It was maybe this big. And if I think real hard, I could probably come up with the name of like SK1 or something like that. And it had 2 little yellow buttons, and you could say something into the built-in microphone in the
Oh yeah, it
corner.
was the Casio.
Yeah. Oh,
It
oh, was
was
it Casio? Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe, yeah,
I think it was yeah, and it had an onboard like
yeah.
couple second
Sample.
sampler. Yeah,
And
okay.
so, I a combination of that, which was a long time ago, and just always just liking pianos. Whenever I'd go to somebody's house or church, there was always a room with a piano in it at church and nobody was
There were
there,
lots of
and
pianos around that place.
nobody cared if we played them. Like nobody came
Chopsticks all
in.
day long or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And so as a kid, like I think I saw some people playing Heart and Soul or something like that. I was like, oh, how do you can I do that? And so that was it, man. I was kind of hooked uh, there from the keyboard perspective. And then you flash forward, and my sister's friend or maybe boyfriend, I don't know, but she said, "You got to meet this guy. You got to come to his house." And I'm like, okay. And I think I had bought a Casio or had a Casio given to me for Christmas with like the drum pads on it or something with like one track of sequence recording. Not even sequencing, just to record. You could record one thing and then you could play with your, recording. But beyond that, I met this one guy. I still remember his name is William Melton. I wish I knew where he was today, but he was into Rush, and he had keyboards set up like Geddy Lee, like his old A-frame. Sorry, that was my mom, and I feel really rude just hanging up on her.
Sorry, Mom.
It'll be fine. She's fine. She's not trapped under anything heavy.
Blame me.
Which, by the way, I talked to her the other day. She said she ran into your mom and your dad, and asked them both, "Oh, well, do you know about the podcast?" They were like, "No."
That's funny.
Yeah. So, but anyway, she introduced me to this guy, and he had a sequencer and Roland D50, like it was the big boy stuff, like Roland, like you saw that on MTV, like, whoa, Korg and Roland, what are those? And MIDI cables all over the place going into a tiny little rack mixer that went into an amplifier, and there was like one microphone, and it was just like it was awesome. It just looked, and he had one of those, you remember those kind of glass globe things that had the little lightning that would shoot out? The 80s equivalent of the lava lamp in the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what got me into it. And he was so cool. He was like, knock yourself out. You can stay here as long as you want. You can do whatever you want here. And I recorded I wasn't really sequencing. I was real-time recording the worst. I mean, just the worst music. Like, it was, all major chords. But eventually, I made some deal with my parents or whatever, and he was getting out of it, and he sold us the gear, and that led into I joined a band, and we recorded an album, and it's been an addiction of equipment ever since, right?
Oh wow, the A word.
Yeah. Already.
I don't know if I'm ready to accept that or not.
I'm,
What was this guy's name?
His name was William Melton, but he went by Trey, and he was my sister's age, or I guess still is my sister's age, but just, I mean, unbelievably cool to let like a preteen kid like play with his really expensive stuff and be just totally cool about it. Like he was a very kind person, and I ended up like, we were friends for a little bit, and then I think I went off to college and we lost touch or whatever. But my friends came out, like all my friends and him, we're musicians, and so age is not really a barrier when you're a musician. It's just like you're just hanging out.
Yeah, no, it's one of the more natural mentorship scenarios that I've experienced. People are excited that young people are into it, and so they're willing to mentor, and the young people are so impressed with the people that have been into it and think they could never reach that level and want to hang out with them.
Yeah. What about what's your story? The first time I met you with this, there was some Cubase involved, and there was maybe a couple of synthesizers, or one or two, and you were also recording an album with your friend Brian, I think.
Yeah, Brian Mitchell. We'll get him in here someday. it's kind of amazing. We kind of reconnected within the last couple of years, and see each other multiple times a year now. So that's pretty cool.
Really good.
Growing up, I listened to a clock radio. I think my parents listened to KVIL, and that's what I listened to, and I knew I think the guy's name was Ron Chapman, the DJ. But anyway, when the Edge came into town, it was 94.5. It was alternative rock. No more Led Zeppelin and this and that, and no more country. And I started listening to stuff on there, and I really dug a lot of the songs that had synthesizers, but I didn't know what that was at the time. But
Yeah.
I was very into computers. My dad was an IT guy. Back then it was called data processing. And he knew that computers were the future. And so he bought an Apple II when I was in 4th grade. And my brother and I learned to program BASIC on it. I mean, we would just waste entire weekends. We would make a little program of a pizza shop where you come in and it prints it on the screen and welcome to this, and you could do all your order, and then it would regurgitate it to you. But that's it. That's all it did. But we were just thrilled about that. So I had the computer thing down, and when I started learning about the music and that these were kind of computer instruments, it just even more of a hook. And I got into bands. My brother's friend had a CD player, which was just beyond future tech for me. It was just amazing, and I didn't understand. I'm watching it in those early ones. There were top loaders, even though they were kind of the component rack kind of style, and they had a little window, and you could see the disc spin around, the little rainbows going around. And I was mesmerized, going, I don't understand how that works. That doesn't make any sense to me. And he had but anyway, he had, there were very limited CDs in the early days. Only really big albums came out on it. And but this guy was into Depeche Mode and New Order, Pet Shop Boys. I think he had some Erasure and Yaz. And so I don't remember who was coming to town. I think it was New Order or Depeche Mode, and he lent my brother his CD player and a stack of CDs. And my brother was listening to these all the time, so I was listening to these all the time.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, so I got into that, and I was in junior high, and we were just like, man, we should start a band, because one of my friends had a crappy Yamaha keyboard and this and that. Anyways, it's really where it started, and those are the bands we were trying to emulate, and they used these awesome synthesizers and keyboards, which I could never find where I lived.
Right. Until we found out Guitar Center was in Dallas.
Well, actually,
in Arlington.
On Pipeline, near me was a Brook Maze.
Oh yeah.
You know where that Domino's is on Pipeline, kind of by Chateau Valley, in Mooresdale?
I mean, I know where Pipeline is, and it's a long road. I'll just play along. Sure.
There's a crappy strip center on Pipeline, and there are two things there that have never left. One is the laundromat, and one is a Domino's pizza. But amongst the things that have come and gone was a Brook Maze, and amongst the Steinways or Yamahas or whatever they had in there, they had a keyboard in there. I couldn't tell you what it was to this day, but it was a kind that had it wasn't floppies, but I think it was the 3 1/4 discs, and you could load samples and things.
Sure.
Yeah. Big monster keyboard. Anyway, we'd ride skateboards down there and just jack with the keyboard and leave. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, they hated us. Sure. I know exactly what you're talking about. Do you remember in the malls when they used to have like piano/organ places in the malls? I don't even know what the name was, but I love stopping in there like, here's the demo song, and they press the button and you're like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, those
Yeah.
places were great, and the people hated us there too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, they're marketing their expensive stuff to the wrong crowd.
The paradigm shift did come for me the first time I got taken to a Guitar Center or a Brook Mays, and it was like, what? You could just buy everything here to be in a band. You know,
Yeah,
like, there's your drum sets, there's your microphones, there's your expensive keyboards. I want to win the lottery. Yeah.
yeah, literally one-stop shop. I think, and that really, I didn't have any money to spend on anything. Um, but Brian, he I don't know, that's a good question for him. He acquired we had a couple keyboards, and I couldn't tell you what they were.
I want to
And what
say Insonic. Did you have an Insonic ever? Or did
Yes, but
he?
that came later. I'm trying to think of
Okay.
kind of the early thing. Maybe we just had like it wasn't a DX7. It was the the keyboard you bought at the department store, you know.
Yeah.
It
Right.
had some drum pads maybe, and it maybe had some crappy drum loops, so like rock, bossa nova, reggae.
Yes.
But and so we had maybe two of those, and we were trying to record stuff, and it's a nightmare. It's a technical nightmare
Yeah.
because we didn't have what we needed, but we didn't know what we needed.
Right.
Anyway, one day his dad bought him a PV, who I didn't even know made keyboards, a PV DPM3, and it had
Right.
an onboard. Let's say it's an 8-track sequencer.
Right.
Man, I don't know, 16 note polyphonic.
Yeah.
Had some really good sounds. Anyways, but then we couldn't figure out the sequencer because we're stupid. And
Well,
I
some of
didn't
them are
read
terrible.
written this one. The Yeah, I don't know. I remember after I learned it, it was stupid easy, and I could fly over the little buttons no problem and go edit and do whatever I wanted to. But before then, it was just Greek. But we had a friend, Chazz Hewitt, and he came over one day, and I wasn't even there. This was he went over. He's at Brian's, and he figured out the sequencer. And this guy
Yeah.
is one of these natural, just virtuosos. Listens to something on the radio, plays it. Probably couldn't read a sheet of music to save his life. And he's
Right.
still
Right.
around. I talked to him a few years ago. I think he lives Georgetowny. So
Right.
he would be a guy I would roll into
We
this as
should
well.
call him. Yeah.
But anyway, he figured out the sequencer, so we were starting to sequence stuff, and then we started to acquire gear because we learned about MIDI and out and through, and with out
Yes.
and through,
Yeah.
you could have a much better time. And then I think that's when we really started to acquire things.
I like that. Much better time without and through. It's so true though.
But yeah, but the PV, we quickly realized the limitations of the PV sequencer, especially with controlling offboard gear.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when people were getting 386 computers
Oh
around that
yeah.
time, and we got a version of Cakewalk, and it was DOS based.
Yeah. Oh, I
Um,
remember that one. Yeah.
it was little like purple and white rectangles for the events and tracks, and I hated it.
Well, there's a lot to
And
hate.
it was a good learning experience because the kind of the format, stacked tracks on the left side, time
Sure.
going left to right, blah blah blah. And
Which
then
you take for granted today, right? Like, but that was the idea of a timeline is completely like from the ground up,
yes,
just
the PV was modular. You would say, I want a 4-bar chunk that is in 4/4 at this BPM on the PV, and then inside of that, you had 8 tracks that you could assign to instruments and things, and you could put a couple independent effects, and then you could have a global effect. And then you went to your next section, and then at
right,
the end, you would sequence these sections. Like, I want section 1 4 times, then I want section 2, then I want section 1, then I want section 8, then I want section, this and that. So it was
right.
this weird kind of deal. It was not linear.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
and
to your point.
it's funny because that concept then came back to the computer, at least in Cubase anyway, many years later. After I mean, it's pretty recent where they started doing song sections A, B, C, and D that you could then pull in and say, okay, this is my song section A. Now I can start arranging them. I think in real time. I stopped using Cubase at that point. Never got into that.
Yeah, after Cubase, I think I think this is another good Brian question, but I'm gonna say I think we upgraded to Cubase because we quickly took advantage of that format, but also exposed the frustration and limitations of the visual elements and we grew up with mice and you could
Yeah,
use that in there, but it was just in a it was different. But we got Cubase and then we loved it.
yeah,
It
yeah.
made sense. It worked. It was great. We never did the arrangements in Cubase. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. I never really. I was just like, no. I want, even if I'm repeating stuff, I want to see it, front to back, all of it.
right,
You know, because then in a compositional way, I never actually like to repeat stuff.
right,
If I have a drum loop here and I have the same one over here, this one's gonna have, I don't even care. It may have a little hi-hat hit in it that you don't
right,
know about.
right.
Okay, I can hear you.
You can hear me and see me now because, well, the battery on my camera died.
Oh, okay. I was
Well,
about to say it's like something just got disconnected, and that's the.
exactly what happened.
So is that what do you have, like a DSLR?
Yeah. I guess don't need that plugged in anymore, so I can show you the awfulness that is. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
That's a Panasonic GH5, and well, there's no reason to leave it on there. Hold on. So this is he has interchangeable lenses.
Nice.
This one's called the GH5S, which was kind of built for, really cheap filmmakers, a micro four thirds. And then Voigtlander makes a lens. And I like showing people this. Let's see if you can see what the f-stop is there.
0.95.
0.95.
That's a weird one.
Well, it's really wide open, right? Most f-stops usually as fast as you can get is like,
but that's how you're getting your narrow depth of field.
yeah.
Okay.
And so it's I don't know if it's the best lens that you can get for that camera, but I think it is. So
it looked great.
yeah. This is now going to be very disappointing.
Well, let me ask you, what is I'm using the front camera on my Surface.
Yeah. That's what
Does it look all right?
It looks fine.
Okay. Or does it look like a Zoom meeting?
I mean, it looks like a Zoom meeting, but like at least you know how to, there's some people who like frame their shots like this, and at least you know what you're doing. So that helps a lot.
Well, I wanted to, as long as it looks like I'm looking at you.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's I actually have a whole thing here that I can put this up and put you at eye level.
There you go. Yeah, I need to this kind of works, but I kind of want to get it up to where I'm not looking down. But we'll see. But hey, you can see my wonderful background.
So for Christmas, my wife bought and so I would use a pillow. I'd put my laptop on a pillow, and she would. I do a lot of video editing on that too. And then she bought me this thing, which is like a little.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it's got the cooling thing.
Yeah, and I haven't turned that on, but everything seems to stay cool anyway. Yeah, when you were talking about Apple IIc, that reminded me of a real quick story. So I'm in Bedford Junior High, and I had just learned how to make sound through BASIC, and so Top Gun had just come out, like, or maybe it was on home video at that time, or I don't, but it was a big deal.
It came out in 86.
Something like that.
Okay.
And so, but everybody loved it. Everybody, like, that was the thing. And so I programmed the theme song. Like, I just sat at home and typing away, and it's just the beast of boop 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 boop, like that, but really long and drawn out, boop boop boop, like really long.
Oh wow,
So
getting flashbacks.
Yeah, so I go into the computer lab, and it's computer time, and usually we have time to like screw around before class. And so I load it up and I hit enter, and I don't know what happened, but like everybody got quiet because she told us to all quiet down, and it starts going. I can't stop it. Like, and there's no volume knob. Like, I'm like, I don't, like today I know there's probably a break, control C to break or something, but I didn't know that then. And so like, and I never got in trouble at school. So she was just kind of like, really? We're doing that. Okay.
I had to let it play out.
Yeah.
That's
like,
pretty.
And it was one of those things where it played the first stanza and we're like, okay. And then it started, and with the second one, I'm like, it's almost done. I'm sorry.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Bedford Junior High. No, we had an Apple IIe, but I know it. I loved the 2C. That was a cool looking machine, and I had a friend down the street that had one of those.
That's right. We had the 2C at home, and then all the computer lab was all the 2Es.
2E.
Right?
Yep.
The
big boxes, and the 2C was that kind of funky one with the grooves in it, and if you got the monitor that came with it, it was maybe a 10-inch little sucker.
Yeah.
And it had the floppy on the side.
Yep. Oh, I can still hear the beep and the chatter of the whenever you first turn it on. Yeah.
My dad went through a phase, maybe spurned by my mom. He had all this. They met in Korea, and he was over there in the army. But he bought all this high end audio gear there because it was cheap as dirt.
Okay.
He had reel to reels, and he barely used them, so they were in basically mint condition. And then I went back for him when I was getting into all this. I was like, oh, where's that? And they're like, oh, we gave it away. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But and then I finally had a talk with him. I don't know. But I had a computer. I had a Laser 128, which was an Apple clone.
Yes. I remember that.
And it was like a briefcase. I mean, it had a handle in the back.
Right.
But it looked like a 2C, but it was as wide as a 2E.
Right.
It had an integrated floppy, and you could connect it to an RF modulator and put it in the TV and whatnot. And the handle conveniently flipped down if you wanted to tilt it up. But and all my programs are on these floppies. And I went back for them one day after college, and they're like, "Oh, we gave that to the neighbor," and I'm like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" Because they were, and I got excited about it because they were coming out. They had these Apple II emulators on PC.
Right.
I'm like, "Oh, I want to go get my old programs."
Sure, you do. Yeah.
So that's just, I mean, even if I hunted that guy down, I know that crap's. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he shoved it in the back of his closet. Maybe I can find it.
Well,
so that's cool.
The flip side to that is my parents keep everything or kept everything. And man, we are dreading the day that we have to go through all of that stuff. There's so much stuff, all of it, everything. And it's like a Tetris puzzle in the house. But yeah, so damned if you do, damned if you don't, I guess. Keep the stuff.
So that's cool. I remember, tell me if I'm wrong, you were in the jazz band at LD Bell.
Yes. So I was scheduled for band at Bedford Junior High like day one. And I get in there and I'm like, I think I want to play drums. And they're like, no, everybody wants to.
Sorry, dude, you're not the first in line.
Yeah.
And have a clarinet.
Then I don't. I mean, and they're like, but
I'm out.
Music teacher says that you're really good. And I'm like, I am, and no thanks. Like, if it's not drums, I'm out. And so first day I quit. But
'Cause
then
everybody wanted Brian Youngblood.
so I didn't, I mean, I didn't even know him. Like I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
I
But
was
yeah,
just in junior high and I knew drums were cool and that's what I wanted to do.
I
Uh,
think he was the 7th grade teacher at Hearst, Bedford, and Central, because
prob-
those are the feeder schools for Bell.
and probably he probably brought a drum line to our elementary school and that's what I was like, yes, thank you. But yeah, oh, and then I show up like before classes start, my first day of high school, and Mrs. G is in her tiny little office and she so kind. And I was like, look, I don't know how to read music and I really don't want to be in band, but I think I want to be in jazz band because I want to play keys. Like, and my mom was there and
And
she,
I can play keys.
yeah, and I can comp chords and like I can read a chord chart and I know what minor and major are and I can learn. And so yeah, it was a whole thing. Like, yeah, I don't know how long they deliberated or whatever, but it was like, sure, you're in. Evidently not that many people want to be in jazz band.
The weird thing was I was in band and I didn't even know about jazz band. That, and I think they just they could have done a better job of advertising it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how I found out about it. I don't know who told me or whatever, but Brian Youngblood taught that. And he is the other one who like definitely started the addiction to the, I mean, that guy was awesome. Talk about,
From what I know, he's still awesome.
he was cool not only as just a good mentor, as a good person, but like because he wanted more than anything to be in an 80s rock band. And it's like any moment that he had to kind of show that off or show us that we could do that, like in jazz band, he would be like, all right, so this is a bossa nova, this is rock and roll, you know. He'd go into it and like, these are 16ths. And I, every time he sat behind the drum set, it was like, why are you not on an album, man? You sound like what I hear coming out of my radio.
And drumline, hey, why don't you play this? And he was like, nah, nah. And every once in a while, he would just take over and go crazy. I'm not talking about, he would play parts that we were trying to learn, but we're like, hey, we're gonna put on Tom Sawyer. We want you to sit down and go
Right.
nuts or this and that. And every once in a while, he would.
Yeah, yeah. He didn't flex very often, but when he did, oh man, it was amazing. It was like watching a drum god, you know?
The best part was if you don't know this, he has a little brother. That
Oh, I
was
didn't know that.
He may have been a sophomore when you were a senior, and if
Okay.
not, then he came in the next year. Okay, so Brian, much older, but this kid was not far behind us,
Right.
and he was a percussionist, and he
Okay.
went to Hearst or Bedford, I think maybe junior high, but he was talking about him one day, and we're like, oh, your brother's probably awesome to have you as a teacher and this and that, and he goes, no, he doesn't care. He tells me I don't know anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Just like brother. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is a total family thing right there, because you have what I'm gonna call one of the greatest uh, percussionists and percussion teachers. I'm not even clearly in the district, clearly in the state, maybe in the
Oh
nation
man, in the
or the
nation.
world,
Yeah.
and you're telling him you don't know what he's talking about. So that's just greatness.
I've heard I've heard a lot of drummers and I've recorded a lot of drummers and I've been around, in my experience, Bo Griffin. I don't know if you knew him.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, we were same grade.
He,
Red-haired guy with the glasses.
so he was the drummer for my band.
Okay.
We're still pretty good friends. There was a point when we were playing, and I thought, man, I bet you are the best drummer, not only in Texas, but like in at least the southern United States. Like, and still his chops are amazing. But the same with Brian Youngblood. Like, oh my gosh, that guy he was killer, like so killer. And any band who wanted him in there, like it would, anyway. Yeah. I mean, you and I have the same respect for Brian. He was one day he says, he may have introduced me to Guitar Center. I think he was the first one because he was like, he had a friend who was at Guitar Center who was selling Session 8, like in the high pro audio thing. And he says, there's this thing I want you guys to learn about. So for jazz band, we're going to go to Guitar Center.
To
And
learn
like,
about Session 8.
there was no permission slips. We just all jumped in his van and he said, hey, are y'all hungry?
Oh, Youngblood?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I'm taking, where'd you go? Taco Bueno?
Yeah, Taco Bell.
Taco Bell.
And straight over to like, and I thought everything was cool. I missed my next class and they were like, where were you? And I was like, oh, I guess just say I skipped it because
I don't want to get him in
I was
trouble.
with a teacher, but I don't want to get him in trouble. So sorry, like I thought this was a thing that was cool with everybody.
That's funny.
I thought that was so, but yeah, it was eye-opening to see Session 8 like right when it came out and just like 8 tracks on a 386, man. And it's just like, what? You can edit that? You know,
Yep.
the idea of the 4-track recorder we were talking about, like we didn't know we needed it, and then we figured it out, and then we realized, oh, you have to get it right.
Right. And what that brings me back. We were doing Cubase pretty often, and we had acquired a decent amount of gear. We soon discovered the benefit of rack mounted versions, and a controller. But part of that was the Soundblaster 16 came out.
Yes.
And you had two tracks or a stereo track of CD quality recording.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember recording a CD and playing it back and just going, this is nuts.
Yeah.
And I started remixing other people's songs.
Right.
And mostly by just cutting them up.
Right.
Yeah. And then, it was another piece of puzzle. Like, okay, we can actually record our own stuff, but we still were playing it live.
Right.
It's like live to tape, which was sequencer to sound card.
Right. Yeah,
so that was cool, man.
And it's like the kids these days won't know the pain it was to like, all right, so there's sequencer to tape, and then there was ways to synchronize your sequencer to your tape playback, which I got into, and then the digital revolution of the whole Alesis ADAT, like which made home recording sort of affordable, and just the whole idea of having external outboard gear and having to patch through things and inserts and just the entire like chain of everything. You can do it all. I can do it all now here on my little phone. All I need to do is, and it sounds pretty darn good.
Yeah, ADAT was great. But I think like we were talking the other day, a lot of the people that, were into this and had gear, they always had different stuff.
Yeah.
And they never understood where you found what you had, because wherever they went to get their stuff, that stuff didn't exist.
Right.
But on the other term, there was the timeline that mattered. And like I was trying to say, there's this dovetailing of technologies, but these belong to one guy and these belong to the other guy. We missed the ADAT. We were doing like a tape 4-track, and then we had done some recording with a guy who had a Session 8, and we were like, oh, we should grab one of those. But when we went, they didn't have that anymore.
Right.
They had evolved the product to where you didn't need the huge rack space.
Right.
You had a single rack that was called an 882 IO.
Right.
8 in, 8 out, and like a stereo mix out or something like that. But then the card that was a Session 8 it was a PCI card or whatever. It was a computer card that went in your computer, and then you just had an interface cable to this one single rack space. And so we were so even though we had our heart set on a Session 8, but we couldn't get one anymore. But this is what they had. But it was actually better, and then but I think that's why we never had an ADAT.
Right. Well, and so the first thing that I learned, and that you probably learned with your Sound Blaster, was, hey, how come it's not super quiet? Like, what's all this digitally? Like, why is that noise there? Whenever I'm playing stuff, I don't hear it. But like when it's just quiet and I wanted to play like a really nice guitar intro or something like that, what's going on? Well, okay, so then you have friends who are electrical engineers or whatever, and they're telling you, oh, the inherently inside your computer is super noisy, and you don't want your A to D converters there. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I do have ADATs, but I can't edit them like I can this. And so ADAT had this thing called Light Pipe, and it was like they're 8 tracks digitally, looks like SPDIF out of the back of your TV, over a little fiber optic cable, which was just cool anyway. But
Right.
also, at the time, I'm looking around, who sells these cards? Oh, Pro Tools for $1 million? No thanks. And then a company called Sonorus made a thing called a Studi IO, and I call them and they're like, this card's coming out. And so I talked to them and I was like, I can beta test this for you. I build computers. And so I can try different motherboards and all this stuff. And so they're like, all right, for $500, we'll send you one. And so I had digital in and out of my computer, 16 tracks and 2 ADATs. And it was like, all right, I'm rocking.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool, dude.
It was not as cool as like it was so beta testing is definitely beta testing, and like it never worked.
Because it never works.
Right. Yeah. And I'd always like, all right, here's my bugs and a bug report. And they'd send it. Like, I think I got it humming one time, like every time it would work. And then they shipped the next thing and it was like, and they went out of business. But it was just cool to be kind of part of that for a second. I hope it wasn't me that put them out of business, but it was cool for a second.
We recorded an album way back when at a studio. And the guy had session 8, but we had so many keyboards and we had polyphony issues.
Yeah,
Or polyphonic limited.
sure.
So we were syncing with, I guess, SMPTE code, reel to reel, and session 8 and Cubase.
Right.
And so I have 3 or 4 reel to reels of these. I forget the brand. They're kind of the waxy boxes and everything.
Ampex.
Yes. Yeah. And this is the beauty of the evolution, is those have been kept in a climate controlled environment since their inception in 94.
Right.
But people found out that there's something with those tapes where they degrade and this and that. But I found a company, I'm sure there's more than one, and they do a thing where they basically bake the reels, is what they call it.
So this is what we do at school, because all tape does this, even videotape.
Okay.
And we do this at school. People bring us VHSs and whatever videotape they have. And the very first thing we do is we pull out the beef jerky maker, because that's all it is. And you put them in there for 4 hours. You run them through the tape machine. I personally fast forward all the way, rewind all the way, clean the heads, and then play it. Some people just stick it in there and play it. But yeah, if you just play back straight when something's been sitting there for too long and you don't bake the tapes, yeah, man, it's not good.
Okay, so
yeah,
that's cool that but I kind of discovered this on my own. I was just looking for someone who could give me the ISO all the audio off of these in a digital format.
yeah.
And that's how I fell down this rabbit hole. And in one of the companies that I was looking at, they basically said, for the most part, you may be one and done. Like,
Yeah.
we will bake these tapes and we'll give you the ISO files, and you can have the tape back, but it's never going to do you any good. Like, this tape is gone. Like, you will destroy it in the process of doing this, which I'm fine with if I get the data.
Yeah.
Mainly because the mix we got off that dude, blew. It sucked. It was like a rap studio, so it was just super bassy and crazy. He's just like, I don't know how to mix this. I'm like, what are we doing here? Anyways,
what are we doing here?
So it's one of these like to-do lists, and for 30 years, like, I want to remix this damn album.
Yeah.
And
well, Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. I have old ATAT tapes. I still have my ATATs. And I have friends. I had no idea that people were fans of that first album that we recorded. I thought it was just mainly for us, a couple of friends or whatever. But then one of my friends introduces me to a guy who's got a studio, and he's like, "Oh man, I love." I think the song was called Matahari. He's like, "I love Matahari. It's so good. I don't know how you did that." Blah, blah. And it's just like gushing, and I'm like, I did that when I was a teenager. So part of me wants to like redigitize those and get them to a point where I can just be like, call him up on a Zoom call and be like, here, we'll break it down. This is what I did. Here's my kick drum. Here's my bass.
I got a better thing for you. I just did this last week. Let me share my screen real quick.
Oh,
I know it's like we're on a new session here. Okay. I found a cassette of a garage band I was in high school.
Pezhead.
And I bought a while back a little teeny Walkman sized cassette player that will connect via USB to record stuff.
Yeah.
And so I recorded it, and then I went to CD Baby.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're unfamiliar with that.
Oh, that's where our first album was.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm saying if it's on CD Baby, then you can easily put it on Spotify or somewhere.
Yeah. No, it's on Spotify. Like it's.
Oh, I was gonna. That was my whole thing. I was like, hey, take your album and put it on Spotify and send the guy the link for Spotify.
No, I mean we've been on iTunes and Spotify, and Bo has set all that stuff up, and like he calls me every once in a while. He's like, dude, you made 12 cents.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was gonna call you, because I did this today. Our band was called Pezhead.
Yeah,
because that's a great garage band name. Anyways, and it just showed up today, so I was excited, and so I did that, and then I'm only in contact with one of the other. There were 5 of us, and I'm only in contact with one of them, and it's a passive like Instagram thing.
Right.
And I sent him a message today with a link to it on Spotify, and I was like, "Hey man, hope you're doing well. I think you might appreciate this," and sent the link. And the funny thing is, when we were growing up, he was very like super into the Doors, and
I never understood the Doors.
Well, I mean, he was in and Pearl Jam was right then. I think it was when the Doors movie came out, so we all got into the Doors.
Well, yeah. So I had a girlfriend who was really into the Doors, which meant that I was into the Doors.
There you go.
But because of the Doors movie, and then we broke up, and then I was no longer into the Doors. All their music felt a little phoned in.
There's some Doors stuff I really like.
Yeah.
I really like the keyboard on Riders on the Storm.
Okay.
And there are some things that are kind of, top 40 cheese.
Yeah.
In my opinion, but there's some stuff in there that there's probably 3 songs that I would just, if I had a, the playlist of Mike, they would make an appearance. Probably Riders on the Storm, The End, and I don't know, something else is in there somewhere, but yeah.
So when I hear Riders on the Storm, I hear potential for a really cool sound bed, and that sound bed is realized in Beck's 2 turntables and a microphone. Like that's where, and I know that those are decades away from each other, but it's sort of like I feel like that's what y'all were trying to do, kind of.
That man is genius.
I do Beck so much. He's pretty good. But yeah.
Okay, well, if you already know this, I mean, the Spotify kind of hack thing. Yeah, look at that, 0 monthly listeners.
Well,
we're going platinum.
Gonna crank that up to 1, so don't you worry.
All right, yeah, I'm on the drums. What was your band name? I want to look it up.
Whu Gnu, WHU space GNU. Let's see if it comes up. Yeah, the blue cartoonish new head. This was yeah, and so
is that a Bo Griffin design?
That actually was, I don't know if you knew Jonathan Myberg, but his cousin, uncle or somebody drew that, and it very easily could have been me or Bo or anybody, but that's sort of been the logo. So out of all those songs, so rock and roll.
You mentioned Matahari.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun one.
So why is Trainwreck a different? Oh, it's a different album.
Yeah, two
Or
albums. So
okay,
the funny thing, Trainwreck was like this. Yeah, see how far apart they are? 1997 and then 2009. Uh, so yeah, this one is a lot better produced, but honestly, some of the songs on it are not my favorite. Oh, actually, I think everybody in all bands have that, right? Like, not everybody loves every song. But
well, they
that's
were written by different people,
yeah,
and there was the whole clash of egos, and that's a
sure.
cool song, but it doesn't go with us.
Right, right. And the whole idea behind the well, we want to tell a narrative through this album, and I just never got that. I was like, what? How about just have some awesome songs, you know?
Somebody had been listening to Pink Floyd recently.
Well, and so I actually helped a guy record an album, and his name, let's look him up. Craig Kotfas. I think he may have one
On
on.
Spotify.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Before I
This
do that, are
okay.
you one of these walking six?
I am. So the first guy in the kind of pinky shirt, whatever, that's Tony. He was our cello player. The next guy is Bo.
Okay.
And then the next guy is Jonathan Myberg.
That is not you.
That is not you. I am the next guy.
Here?
Yep. And
Okay.
the next guy is Lee Shields. You may have known him for a
That
second.
name sounds familiar, but couldn't tell you.
He was probably 2 years behind you, but he was on the drum line. And then that is Jack Worthy, but we call him Jonathan Worthy. Oh, no. His name was Jonathan Worthy when you knew him, and he changed it to Jack because Jack is a power name.
Jack Kennedy.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. That's what he said.
All right, let me go. We're searching for
Greg with a C.
Craig.
Yeah. Kotfas. So that one where his hand is in front of his face?
Got him.
Yeah. I recorded that album.
Oh,
Now,
that's cool.
click on See More just to see how many songs are on this album.
58.
So when we recorded this album, the idea was, hey man, did you know that CDs hold 74 minutes of music? Let's fill it.
We were very conscious of that and the concept of overburning
Right.
and the hidden track. 3 minutes and 33 seconds of silence, and then the hidden track, or whatever the code was.
Our very last song has I don't know how many minutes of silence, but yeah.
Ether Aura.
No, well, not on this one, on the previous album, on the Whu Gnu album. There's
You had a hidden track?
Yeah, it was well, and it didn't have a real name, but I think we ended up cutting it out and making it its own track on CD Baby for Spotify. It's called Jesus Blues, and it's about a guy who has a roommate whose name is Jesus. It was the other album, the blue one. Yeah, yeah. See if it's there. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, and so when we released it, Bo, I mean, we all went to church, but Bo was like, people can't know. Like, my parents are going to be mad that I recorded this.
I do remember that. Bo went to church at
the big Hearst Methodist.
not First Hearst, but the one on Bedford Road and the freeway.
Yeah, the medium-sized Methodist church.
Or First United Methodist Church.
Yeah,
because I was dating a girl who also went there, and I went there for Wednesday night one time.
It happens, yeah.
I had never been to what I'm calling an evangelical church where people, A, there's a drum set on stage. That freaked me out.
Yeah.
But B, where people are, kind of dancing in the pews, hands in the air type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was looking at it going, what on earth is happening? And I looked to her kind of like, man, these people are crazy.
Yeah.
And she was doing the same thing.
Oh, you're one of these people.
It was the last time I ever went to that church. Just because it freaked me out.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you and we had a definition of what church was growing up. We went to the same one all the time. And then you're introduced to this other thing and you're like, oh, that doesn't seem right at all.
No, the best thing about our church was that rock and pipe organ.
Yes, I remember before there was a pipe organ, but yeah,
I do too. We had the, electronic funeral parlor organ, for lack of a better term. But yeah, that was to me, church was pipe organ and piano music and
yeah,
a choir, or a cappella something, or if it's fancy on Christmas, maybe you got some handbells or a harp.
that's right.
Um,
Remember when the
so
handbells started showing up?
yeah, so when you got a drum set on stage, and to this day, sometimes I go to my brother's church and they basically have, you know, three guitarists and a electronic drum set, and I'm just uh
Yeah, it
just
does.
not for me.
Yeah, it's also not for me because of a couple of things. Usually, I mean, the musicians are okay, and I know they're not getting paid, and I know it's all volunteer, and I know that. But if you are going to do that, here's my expectation. Dave Matthews needs to be the guy on stage. Like if you have
Yeah.
Dave doing his contemporary Christian type music, okay, I'm in. But like anybody else, no. Give me the old. I'm with you.
Yeah, maybe I have a problem with the songwriters,
Yeah.
not the music, and the orchestration, but I just to me it all sounds exactly the same,
Mm.
and it's all kind of lighthearted and with a decent amount of cheese.
Bo,
And I'll qualify that by saying I love 80s music, but I
yeah,
hate cheesy 80s music.
I know. So Bo would come to our band practice after church band practice, and
Yeah, he played the drum set at the church, right?
well, he'll play anything. He'll play
Okay.
bass and guitar, but probably drums, because usually that's the weakest point. But he would just grab a guitar and start chucking four chords and four chords for the Lord.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, we need to get him on this thing. Oh man.
As far as I haven't kept in touch with him,
Yeah.
but contemporary of Bo and me was Elliot Moon.
Oh yeah.
From what I understand, he's a professional drummer for a church. So to me, if you're full-time drummer for a church, you're either the music director and play the drums, or this is a huge church that actually pays whatever. But I mean, he was a great drummer in high school.
Yeah.
Top of the cream of the crop, played snare.
Yeah.
Some played quints because they just preferred them. And there's razor thin margin between saying you're best of the best and the people below you in
Right.
those. But I think he played snare for 3 years. And to, play started as a freshman was a big deal. And then but he started in seventh grade, and he had a drum set, like a Pearl Export, black 5-piece, from an early age. So I mean, that's what he did.
Yeah.
He had a lot of other little kind of things here and there, but oh, you know what? And I can tie him in. He had a Roland. It was a Juno, but it
Yes.
was purely digital.
Yeah. No, they
And
came
I
out
want to
with
say it was like a Juno 30, or you know
yeah.
what? And it had some really cool sounds,
Yeah.
like sampled timpani or whatever. And it was probably 3-4 octave max,
Mhm.
but it had an octave up and down button.
Sure.
And then maybe it was like 10 inches deep,
Right.
but it wasn't. It was considered a professional Roland. It wasn't, you bought this at Dillard's.
So if
Oh,
you go all the way to the bottom,
Mikey want. Um,
yeah, I know.
sorry, did I say that out loud?
Yeah, I know. It happens. Uh,
Yeah, I always wanted an SH-101, and that looked kind of like it. Looked kind
so
of
if
same.
that was in the 90s, that's probably where you need to start looking.
Okay, maybe it was like a D.
So I had a D50, which was that keyboard right there, and they had the D550, which was the rack. And then I still have a U220,
Oh
which
wait, I'm
is,
going the wrong direction. I'm listening. I'm just.
yeah. So, but yeah, there's a Juno 1, 1985 Juno 1.
It was a Juno. I remember that. Maybe it was this.
That JX10 right there that said Juno 2 on it or something? Or
Is it? I think it may have been a Juno 2. I remember specifically it said Juno
yeah,
because I was jazzed about that. This kind of looks like it because it's only it's
yeah,
4 octaves.
yeah.
Okay, can you go into these?
Uh,
Oh,
probably no. I don't know.
no. You know what? I think that says Juno 1.
Yeah,
That's exactly what it was.
yeah.
4 octaves and down here above the pitch mod, there's an octave up and down. And then it had the wheel for your little menu of sounds.
That's right.
And then and it had some sounds printed on it. There were different banks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yeah. Back in the
I
day.
bet you could ask him and he wouldn't know what it was. This page is making me depressed.
Well, it's so fun, right? Well, because this is not everything Roland made. This is just the kind of the keyboards and synthesizers, because there's no mention of 808 on here anywhere. There's no, you know what I'm saying? Like and I have the sequencer, and anyway, I'm sure they have a whole sequencer page also, but I liked how it's like all the way at the bottom is the very first ones. But yeah, I started going through this one. I was like, oh yeah, oh, and the PCM cards, oh, and this thing, and oh, that thing.
I've still got this.
Nuh-uh, you have a JV. Oh no, that's
JD
a
990
yeah.
with a orchestral expansion card, I think.
Their orchestra stuff was always really cool.
It was great. I mean, the pianos, strings and the hits and everything else, that was our main kind of sound sense. It was a 2 rack.
Yeah,
No, it's at my parents' house. That's why I need to get all my stuff set up, man.
get your stuff set up.
I mean, actually, Brian owns that. That's his. But we always kept our stuff together, and it
Yeah,
would, 6 months here, 6 months there, whatever. Nope, there's no kind of. It's more like that's mine,
yeah,
but it stays in the rack.
yeah, yeah.
The rack travels because it all works together, man.
Yeah, right. Now
I do remember playing around with this in at Guitar Center, the JD 800.
the thing that looked like it was a pipe organ, had all the sliders everywhere. Yeah,
Well, I was thinking of more like spaceship console, but
right,
yes,
right.
I mean, that was just greatness. Oh, okay.
Well,
Wow.
the D50 there is the reason I had that. That was whenever I bought that from William. He
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, it had a little joystick. It was basically so you could do a value left and right or a value up and down. So
Okay.
you go through and change things. Programming sounds in that thing was a nightmare. Basically, you just use what's there. And there's 64 sounds, and it's polyphonic in the sense that you can layer A and B or something like that. But you're not going to get like multi-timbral like drums and stuff. It was a old school synthesizer, and I think Rush used it, which is why he had it, because he loved Rush.
Everybody
And
wants yeah,
yeah,
whatever the band has.
yeah, so that it was fun. I don't have it anymore.
And we've also got this still 106.
106 Juno
It was
106.
the first hybrid. It had DCOs,
Uh-huh.
but it still did analog stuff. So it gave you kind of a cold digital sound
Right.
with analog control
That's cool.
because you still had VCA
Right.
and voltage controlled filters, but you had a digital oscillator
That's
or
awesome.
two of them. And this is the one that output the memory to tape. And I downloaded I'm calling it SysX data, but
Right.
From an MP3 online in the late 90s or early 2000s, really, of the original factory sounds because we didn't have them.
Right.
So I was able to record our sounds
Right.
to save them and then load those up. But yeah, we still got this thing.
That's
It's
awesome.
crazy.
What do we want to talk about next time?
That's why I'm glad we did this because it gives me something to consciously think about and then let my brain figure it out how best to kind of make this work episodically. We're not just like, hey, here's some old keyboards and what we did with them. I mean, it's more about our experiences, which are
Right.
uh,
The
have a lot of parallels, but very, very different. So
Yeah. You nailed it the other day. I don't think we've said it in the podcast yet. when you said, I wasn't out doing drugs and getting in trouble. I was locked in my room making the electric bill go higher, trying to remix this album.
Yeah, I was keeping the house warm in the wintertime.
Yeah,
Definitely.
same.
Yeah. No, I mean, my parents would come in at 4 in the morning because they'd see the light under the door was still on. And
Yeah,
they come in and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I, pull the headphones off. I'm like, "What?" They're like,
yeah,
"What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm working on music." And they're
yeah.
like, "You need to go to bed." And I'm like, "Why?"
Why
And they're like, "It's
do
four
I
in the
need to do
morning."
that?
I had no idea it was 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. Yeah. You couldn't pull me away from it. Yeah. I really want to get my gear back now.
Well, no time like the present.
No, it's gonna happen.
We'll figure out what to talk about next time. I'm sure it's going to be just as riveting as this time.
Yeah, let's shut it down. And we'll think and talk. And I don't know how often you want to do this.
I don't know, once a month, once every, yeah, I don't know. How often do you want to do it?
Uh,
Once every 6 months? Once a year?
no, I was off the top of my head. I thought you were gonna say like once a week, and I'm like, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it has to be like, oh, every Monday or whatever.
Right.
If you're like, hey, you want to talk tonight?
Yeah,
Great, let me know. I don't care.
same.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and try and edit this and maybe even post it to like YouTube, just to kind of go through the motions, just to see like, where am I going to run into problems? Is this a good way for my workflow?
I think that's a great exercise. I mean, everything today was great because
Yeah.
I think I need to get to re-know you and re-know where we're both coming from because I haven't consciously thought about this stuff for that long either.
All
Cool,
right,
man.
man. Well, good talk. We'll see you next time.
I'm glad this worked out during the ice storm. Fantastic.
Yeah, worked out. See you, man.
Mics on, mic.